What's up, guys? Southern Viking 64 here with a new Ahsoka lore video. In the last episode of Ahsoka, we could deduce that she was in fact dead by the start of the video. And to understand this, we need to look at some of the scenes. And you can see in this scene that Ahsoka isn't... Kept you waiting, huh?
I'm one person version of Fortune Fat Man Fat. Akashi no namae wa atashi ga kimeru. What? I go sneaking like I'm Snake. Everybody keep it silent. I go sneaking like.
This is the second take. Black Souls is an India-Japanese RPG maker game that came out in 2017 with the release of Red Hood's Woods. In it, there's a lot of very obscure, vague, and hard-to-find lore, a la Dark Souls, the series which gets its name from. So, because of that, many people have been wondering, what the fuck is actually going on? I don't know. Please, someone, for the love of God, dear, help me. I'm a little baby. I can't put two and two together, or spend an endless amount of time on this one video game. That's where I'm here. In my endless wisdom, to waste everyone's time. Cut this out. Cut this part out. For the love of God, cut this out. So, we begin in the cosmos, in the greater space. In Black Souls, there is a species of beings, aliens, gods, known as Great Ones / Old Ones. They might be interchangeable, might not. And these Great Ones each have their own personal garden with their worshippers, and in there they can form it however they like. And they get their powers from these worshippers. But all Old Ones / Great Ones are shit, and they can't create anything original. And out of all of these Old Ones, there's one called Mary Sue. And Mary Sue is Baphomet's daughter. But Great Ones are alien godlike beings that don't give a shit about kids. So somehow, the Jabberwocky from Alice in Wonderland got a hold of Mary Sue and raised her. And now, because of this complicated family history, and Jabberwocky not being a great person all around, Mary Sue now equates love to abuse. Great Ones are like eldritch gods that disguise themselves as cute anime girls, mainly because they like looking like humans and going around pretending to be humans. Because human concepts such as love and creativity are alien to them, and they pretend to be humans to try and experience that. Great Ones were once worshipped as gods, but that kind of petered out, and with that, so did their power. And of course, all of them have gardens. The ones we know of are Winterbell, Elysium, Chantrage, and Wonderland. With all of this being said, it's heavily speculated that Black Souls takes place somewhere after the Crimean War in 1856. But before World War I. 1914. And in this series, we follow a main character named Grimm. So that's probably not his actual name. And in the real world, Grimm used to be a fairy tale author. Everything was going fine, just peachy, until one day, demons from hell came out of the earth and started killing everyone. Shit sucked. And Grimm would have died, just like the rest of humanity, if it wasn't for it, a blonde-haired girl in a blue dress, who was known as Alice, came over and saved him. Little did he know, this is because of a greater ones, the crawling ones, wanted him for important reasons. But together, Alice and Grimm fall in love. Mainly because he's a cool dude. And together they meet the Prayer Master, and all three of them go on adventures. At some point, the Jabberwocky fucking dies. It's not clear who killed the Jabberwocky because it said both Grimm and the gang killed her, and Vorpal, the Jabberwocky Slayer, slayed her. She could have died a few times. Who knows? So, we're getting back into a bit more of speculation. All of this comes from 2 lines of dialogue from a Jack in the Box. And eventually, Grimm makes a name for himself, probably from killing the Jabberwocky. He's invited into the Castle Camelot, which is the current seat of power in Wonderland. There, he's presumably knighted by the King Pendragon, which uses female pronouns. So I just assume it's Saber from Fate. And Grimm would be invited to join the Knights of the Round Table. Saber would eventually go out to look for the Holy Grail, as one does. And once she found it, it was apparently full of God's blood, like actual capital G God. But it was actually another outer one who we'll meet much later named Mabel. She just thought it would be a funny prank. And this blood would drive Saber mad. So now Saber is an insane tyrant. That's not good, generally. Grimm, along with Saber's son, most likely Mordred, would apparently make a quote-unquote conspiracy that would end with Saber's death. Mordred would then take the crown, would become the first Red Queen. But the apple doesn't fall far from the tree and would also become a tyrant. So Grimm would end up killing Mordred too. All this leads into a theory that Grimm went by another name while he was in Wonderland. Lancelot. Now, he, like Lancelot, are both Knights of the Round Table, masters of every weapon, famous and trusted knights, have some sort of familiar relationship with fairies, and in certain interpretations of the story, Lancelot joins Mordred in the strife of Camelot. Grimm's most canon class is the Knight class. It just so happens to be what TORO draws all the promotional art. And the Knight class starts off with the Knight Sword, which eventually can be upgraded to become the Knight King Sword, which could be a reference to Fate, along with King Arthur being a woman again. And Fate, King Arthur is called the King of Knights. This very well could be Excalibur. Considering TORO is a weeb and there's already Berserk references and Dark Souls references and many others, this is probably a big Fate reference. Now, after all this regicide, Grimm would confess his love to Alice in the Moonlit Library, where they read fairy tales all the time. Now, Grimm, for some reason, would ask the Bandersnatch to make sure no one else gets into the library that night. But the Bandersnatch is just retarded, and when the Prayer Master rolls up and tries to walk in, wondering where his friends are at, the Bandersnatch just lets him in, because he's a friend. And what could go wrong? A spoiler, everything goes wrong. Prayer Master would see Alice and Grimm embracing, and in the biggest cuck move ever, would pray to whatever random god would listen. And he would beg the god to tear the two apart. All because the asshole was upset he became a third wheel. This entire time, Mary Sue has apparently been reading a bunch of books. She really likes fairy tales and fairy tale romances and all that shit. So much so, she would grow an obsession with Grimm and just kind of watching him as he runs around in Wonderland, but not being able to snatch him away because at the moment he's the Crawling One's property. But when the Prayer Master prayed to split them up, that fucked everything up. Mary Sue would finally break in and snatch Grimm, and the Crawling Ones would come over and say, "Hey, what the fuck? This part of me gained sentience and fell in love with my dildo. This is bullshit," and the Crawling Ones would snatch back Alice. Now that Grimm is in Mary Sue's hands, she'd stuff him full of souls of all the other fairy tale authors she's been collecting, such as the Brothers Grimm, Hans Christian Andersen, and Lewis Carroll, and like 7 other people. And now Grimm goes by Grimm, probably in references to the Brothers Grimm work being a collection of stories from German peasants, just like how Grimm is a collection of authors. Now, while Wonderland had some issues like a rampaging dragon and probably a really big bird, it was alright. Elysium, which is now known as Lost Empire, fucking sucks. It's covered in fog that turns people into monstrous demon beasts, the same that attacked Earth. It's ruled by Cinderella and other 4 princesses who seem to all have their own domains. And Cinderella is constantly inviting her starving subjects into her castle for banquets and balls and all that fun shit, only for them to never come back, probably turning into more demon beasts. There's also only 2 dragons left because everyone killed them all. The Hellkaiser and the Platinum Dragon, whose name I forgot. I think it's Calamite. Straight up Calamite from Dark Souls 1. Prostitutes and rapers now just run around everywhere because Cinderella and the other princesses just don't do anything. And the fog turns everyone into monsters anyway. Oh, and now there are a bunch of succubi that are running around telling everyone to fuck, making things even worse. And because of all of this adultery and madness and other stupid bullshit, the old one, Baphomet, Mary Sue's mom, forms the Black Trial, a group of assassins that go out and kill sinners. Very edgy, like very 2000s edge. And now there's Dark Souls undead hunts going around, gathering up the undeads and just throwing them in jail to rot. So now that Grimm is in Elysium, or Lost Empire, instead of being a legendary knight of the Round Table, legendary hero, and 2 times Kingslayer, now he's just rotting in a jail, subject of the undead hunts. But we're gonna leave him there in his little jail cell for now. And we're gonna talk about a different character, Red. You know, Little Red Riding Hood. Now, Red Hood is also a creation of Mary Sue. But again, Great Ones actually suck at creating things. All they know how to do is steal and plagiarize and just write fan fiction, because they're not humans. Creating is specifically a human trait. So Mary Sue just kidnapped a normal girl from the real world and some other people from her family and fucked with their head, most notably making Elizabeth Bathory her mother. She did, but because this was most likely her first time Mary Sue did something like this, and just because she's a psychopath, just bad at everything, Red will die at 20 years old. No ifs, ands, or buts. And Red doesn't even have a good life as is. Her parents abandoned her, and she was forced to live with her grandparents, where her grandfather would abuse her both physically and... And now this would be a good time to mention that there's a lot of depictions of sexual violence in this series. And while also being molested in school, Red now feels nothing both emotionally, physically, and sexually. Depressed all the time, Red, and frankly sick of being abused, Red would eventually murder her grandfather. It's also specifically noted that Santa, who's a real person, never visited her. Just as an additional salt in the wound, just fuck you. At some point, At some point, Red would meet a talking wolf who she names Poro, and the two would grow very close. Poro would even end up eating her grandfather's corpse. A white woman moment. Eventually, her grandmother would figure out that Red murdered her shitty grandfather, and for some reason would immediately try to kill Red for murdering her husband. One final battle later, and Red would kill her other grandparent. And she would live the rest of her days in that house with Poro, making a living as both a mercenary and a prostitute. But Red wouldn't be the only person Mary Sue would kidnap. Yep, no. In fact, almost every companion in Black Souls 1 was just a normal person from the real world that Mary Sue mind-fucked into thinking that they were someone else. So, back to where we left off, Grim is trapped in a jail cell in the massive fortress castle of Fort Ivern, heavily guarded by orcs and guards and other shit. For who knows how long. Eventually, one day, a commotion is heard. Sounds of struggle echo down the halls and bounce off each cell. A guard is thrown to the other end of the hall, slain. And out reveals Jeanne d'Arc, the Maid of Orleans in the flesh. And she's here to save us. Or so she says. She's just breaking out as many captured undead as she can. All one of them. Because I guess the situation outside has gotten so dire, they're start breaking out the generally despised undeads. Not saying no to being set free, Grim escapes with Jeanne, fighting through the remaining guards until one of the very last remaining dragons, the Hell Kaiser, swoops down and proceeds to give Jeanne what she's known best for, burning alive. Grim follows shortly after, but unlike Jeanne, Grim is still an undead. So he's able to spawn back in one of the safe zones not covered by fog and demon beasts, due to the fairies' nature magic being able to keep all of those at bay. It's a refuge for the very few remaining people in the Lost Empire, that being like 30 people in the moments, and one of them's a rabbit. And fairies, but they don't count. Wait a minute, a rabbit? Not just any rabbit though, a black rabbit who calls himself none other than the Prayer Master. The very same Prayer Master who started this whole mess when he prayed for Grim and Alice to stop cucking him. But instead of ripping his head off, Grim doesn't remember a thing before his time in Lost Empire, due to Mary Sue fucking with his head, and shoving 8 souls into his body, giving him schizophrenia. Here, the Prayer Master informs Grim that Cinderella rules with an iron grip, hip, and a magical fog that emanates from her castle. And that Grim is the only one who must go forth and slay her. Many have tried, of course. None have succeeded. So in order to help Grim out, on his adventure, the Prayer Master sends a little fairy guide, Leaf, to both lead him there and aid in combat. And Leaf is chipper enough. Nice contrast to the usual depressed and forlorn inhabitants of Dark Souls worlds, this one being no exception. Her habit for cynical black humor aside. And with that, the two of them head off on the trek to the seat of Cinderella's fortress, Fort Ivern. First through the Forest of Abandon, known for being used as a dumping ground for all unwanted things like trash, daughters, and honor. Venturing through the forest, the pair will stumble upon some breadcrumbs on the ground that Grim may or may not pick up on his way to the massive house sitting deep in the forest. Inside the house, Grim finds both Hansel and Gretel and will either murder both of them or take care of them decently enough. But more importantly, Grim here will meet one of the many women who will be his companion on this quest, the Witch of the Woods, Dorothy. Cynical, laid-back, almost aloof girl who doesn't seem to care about the 2 children that have wandered into her house, only that they're kind of annoying and she just hopes that they don't make too much of a mess. A powerful wizard who's willing to teach Grim magic only so long as he's worth her time. So, well, the two learn magic in the woods, and helping Dorothy, and also helps Dorothy deal with a few troublemaking former companions. She would even join Grim on his quest, letting Grim know that she's actually a gender-bent old man, only for this to be proven false later. After trudging through the sewers of the corpse and prostitute-infested Rottenburg, after slaying its tyrannical mayor, Grim along the way would meet another girl, a small girl named Elma, who seems to be all alone in this crumbling city, waiting for her parents to return. A return that, unfortunately, would never come, at least in not any positive sense of the word. After defeating the mayor, And the gang saves a very high libido maid, Victoria, from the naked giant who fucks all the maids to death. Battling through Fort Ivern together and picking up Jean's ashes along the way, but not before having a rematch with the very same dragon that burned Grimm alive before. Grimm and his small party of mentally deranged women reach the gates of the Fort Ivern, and after being stopped at said gate by La Belle from The Beauty and the Beast, he's summoning guards, which include a bunch of archers and the Tower Knight from Demon Souls, except this time the Tower Knight is just a bunch of cats in a suit of armor. But guards and cats weren't the only thing stopping the party. The doors into the inner castle are blocked by 4 magical crystals, each representing a different princess. So, now needing to travel to the 4 ends of the earth and collect the 4 princess souls, Snow White, Rapunzel, the Little Mermaid, and the Frog Princess. Along the way, our hero meets many other fun and kooky characters, like Goose, a traveling bird woman thief, Elizabeth, a mysterious and refined soul seller, the Saint Catherine on a holy pilgrimage who Grimm saves from skeletons, a newly revived Jean after talking to a bone shaman, one of the members of the Black Trial, Miranda, who only knows strength and violence, as well as meeting and hiring the services of Red and her faithful servant TORO. Along the way, we also fight the same Hellkaiser dragon 2 more times, each time more and more rotting away, so by the end, just fighting a corpse. Truly the best rival. Eventually, the 4 princesses would be defeated or satiated in some way, shape, or form, and we'll learn a little bit more about them. Rapunzel has a lot of gold and likes to spend it all on a bunch of bullshits, like a giant behemoth that will kill her, the Little Mermaid who eats people, Frog Princess does something bad, and Snow White, who's just neurotic and kind of crazy. And would also learn more and more about the elusive goddess of this land, Mary Sue. And after all this, the group storms the castle and confronts Cinderella. There, it's revealed that she's doing all of this because she believes that demon beasts are the true forms of humanity, and the only reason people reject her is because humanity is afraid of chains. Oh, and she fucks her son. Not really caring about any of that because it's stupid. The group kill her in a very climactic battle fitting for any video game. And that's it! Game's over. All that's left to do is pick whoever Grimm's lover, and none of them go well. Like, none of them. Jean is burned alive, again. Catherine gets sacrificed by cultists. Goose dies because of racism, and Grimm has a psychotic breakdown and murders their child. Miranda and Grimm go around killing everyone until Miranda dies. Elizabeth just tries to take over the world. Doesn't work. Dorothy gets pregnant and a demon child bursts out of her stomach. It's revealed that Victoria is a succubus who starts going berserk because of all the sex. So Grimm murders her and then cradles her head. Red storms off, declaring that she's going to kill the true mastermind, ruining their and the demon princess's lives, claiming that as so long as she's alive, this story won't end. With Elma, it's revealed that she's been murdering people and possibly burning their bodies to make the drug ash, and now she's being revealed and hung. And Leaf, well, nothing really bad happens. Only for Grimm to wake up back in the forest, revealing that he's been stuck in a time loop. And several time loops go by. Grimm looking for a way out of this mess, trying all sorts of things, probably losing his mind in the process, until a few key details start standing out. If you do Snow White's quest, which is very simple, just kill all the other princesses, she'll have a psychotic breakdown, finally happy that she is in fact the prettiest of them all. Only to gain clarity and reveal to Grimm that she's not from Lost Empire at all. That she and the other princesses are actually just normal girls from the real world. And that all of them are being held captive here by Mary Sue. Only to explode immediately after, confirming that Mary Sue's watching at all times. But Snow White has many more secrets. So, if we take the world at face value, Snow White's castle is actually on the 3rd level of the world, underneath the Holy Forest in the ranch, which is at a kind of a base level. And underneath there is a massive desert, and then Snow White's castle is underneath the desert. Well, behind the library room in Snow White's castle is a large hole in the ground with a sign that simply states, "If you fall, you die." The only place not really explored, or explored too early if you like wandering around. Jumping down reveals the very underside of the world, the pit bottom, the Ash Lake, Wonderland. A glitchy, distorted mess of a garden of sorts, filled with rabbits and whatever the fuck dark matter is. In Wonderland is also the talking corpse of the Jabberwocky, and also a familiar endless tea party in a moonlit library, guarded by the ferocious Bandersnatch, who asks a very complicated question that has no sensible answer. Obviously, not knowing the answer, Grim goes around and talks to all the rabbits surrounding the table. Most of them talk about dumb bullshit, except for 2. One gives the answer, saying the only answer is to not answer. And the other starts to reveal the true identity of Mary Sue, only to explode just before. After giving the non-answer to the Bandersnatch, Grim is welcomed into the familiar library, meeting a similarly familiar face. Alice. Or a doll of the original Alice, she says. Telling Grim that she was in fact made in order to help him out where the original Alice cannot, due to her being preoccupied and not being able to reach him. It turns out that the library is missing a few books. They've escaped and now are running around Lost Empire, causing some issues. Having probably nothing better to do, Grim and his party, full of fun, wacky characters, go around the entire world, running around and slaughtering every fairy tale they find. Once killed, they turn back into books and then can be placed in a library. Included among these 5 are the 5 princesses. So, after a quick rematch, Grim has 5 more books to add to this library. Library of Rennie, a joke. Anyway, now that the library is full of missing books, the back door opens. You see, if you explore in the very back, there's a door that can't open no matter what. So following this train of thought, once all the books are in the bookshelves, the door opens. Inside the room is several more bookshelves. It's also surrounded by Alice dolls, staring down in judgment. In here, the last set of the missing books are The Maid of Orleans, Saint of Alexandria, The Little Match Girl, The Golden Goose, The Wizard of Oz, Little Red Riding Hood, Elizabeth Bathory, and Alice in Wonderland. Each missing book is related to the corresponding girl, and the only way to get books is by killing the fairy tale. Grim takes the girls to a love hotel under the sea and invites the girls one by one and murders them. One woman beaten to death, another woman stabbed to death, another woman raped and then murdered, all in a cruel manner horrible enough for God to sneer, each dying in horrific ways of betrayal until the room was dyed red with their blood. Some fight back. Most do not. After committing a horrific betrayal, Grim sets all the books back to their right place, only to go back downstairs to stab the doll Alice, embraces him, and she says she understands and forgives him. After setting every last book in the moonlit library, a switch is revealed. Now Grim can turn the whole thing off. Reality shatters. The fairies of the woods are revealed to be nothing more but slugs, bullying a leaf. And even now, during the destruction of the world, a member of the Black Trial arrives to punish Grim for his sins, Linda Mia. Hopefully, Miranda can stop him in time. And after fighting off a berserk Victoria and reuniting with Leaf, the two of them go to the edge of a great abyss. There, the truth is revealed. Leaf reveals herself as the goddess of this land, Mary Sue, constantly watching, plotting, and waiting, all to have her love story enacted. Because Leif was obsessed with Grimm since the beginning, wanting and goading him to give into his darkest desires of rape and murder. Because that's what she believes love is, in her twisted outer one mind. She even reveals that she's been at this for several loops now, so every possible interaction has already happened. And that all of this was made specifically for him. She's literally an edgy fanfic writer. Enraged, Grimm strikes at Leif and an epic, long, final battle commences. After duking it out, tired and exhausted, Grimm gives Leif an offer. He will give him what she always wanted. Sweet love in a bed of flowers. The two copulate, Leif confessing her love over and over to Grimm, before he wraps his hands around her throat and chokes her to death, after finishing inside her. And then all the spirits of the dead come back and give him a standing ovation. Yay! Except Grimm wakes up back in the forest and the loop continues. Dumb bitch. In the bowels of Lost Empire, in a sea of trash and poison, lays the hidden order of the Black Trial, who answers only to the one Baphomet, guarded by the last dragon. Grimm, having nowhere else to turn to, trapped in an endless fanfiction of the mad god, he slays the last dragon and pledges himself to the goat Baphomet, doing her bidding and joining the ranks of those who hunt sinners. In the process, he learns the tale of the massacre at the Sabbath Woods, of how the witches summoned the demon Leonard, who slaughtered all of them, all but Dorothy. Unfortunately, someone else has already killed Dorothy in another loop. After committing several hit and runs and assassinations, whatever you want to call them, the goat Baphomet has one last task for Grimm: the slaughter of the greatest sinner of them all, the Prayer Master. With his death, Baphomet leaves her pit to take refuge in the Holy Forest, destroying it in the process. The slaughter of sinners, Baphomet would gain more and more strength, and she would finally reveal herself to be not just any goat, but Shub-Niggurath, the black goat of the woods with 1,000 young. Mary Sue, of course, being one of them. Now, the mother strikes out against her daughter. With Grimm caught in the middle of the two, he fights back against the black goat in a desperate struggle against the older one. During the clash, the gates to this garden are weakened ever more so, allowing for uninvited guests who may have been watching from afar. For Grimm was never Mary Sue's, nor Baphomet's to claim. And of course, we all know her name. Big blue eyes and a dress to match, golden blonde hair to reflect the sun, and a big blue bow. The sweetest little girl, Alice. The crawling ones has come to take its prize.